Welcome to the Cinematic Flashback Podcast. Get ready to hop into the Wayback Machine as we journey through the wild, bold, and unforgettable films of the 1970s. Each episode, we'll break down a classic movie or a forgotten gem by exploring the who's who of each film, diving into the premise and the plot, and see how it performed then and now, and wrap things up with, did it groove through the decades or lose its beat? Joining me this week is Erin Mullinax, who suggested this episode's film, 1972 Superfly, starring Ron O'Neal. Erin, welcome to the show and thank you for this recommendation.
Thank you so much, Chuck, for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Yay!
Erin, what drew you to this particular film and what makes 70s cinema special to you?
Ooh, okay. Well, first of all, I blame you because you've been hyping up the podcast and talking about it. And I thought, oh, I know a good movie I can recommend. You know, I am a child of the 70s as far as being born in the 70s. And so I think even though I, was a little child, I don't remember too much, but I feel connected to that in some way. And so I love a lot of movies from that decade. This one is an interesting one, and I thought to recommend it. What drew me to it would be probably the music. That was the first thing, of course. And even if people haven't seen the movie, they know the music from Curtis Mayfield, I'm sure. And I actually saw this movie for the first time back in like the 90s as a young adult. My friends and I, we were, kind of into vintage stuff, and, we were young and hippie and, just wanting to get into all the old music. But this movie was one of them that we decided to watch, and it was great. And have you ever seen a movie and just marked it off on your list as this is one of my favorite movies of all time and it's going to stay in my library forever? This was one of those movies. And I actually hadn't seen it except for back in the 90s. I would play it sometimes when we had, parties going on. We'd have it in the background. But it was always one of my faves. And it's funny because I only really watched it thoroughly once, and until recently when we decided to do this in the podcast. So it was kind of interesting when I watched this movie again. I watched it almost for the first time.
I watched it for the first time. This film wasn't even on my radar of films to watch. And I had not heard Curtis Mayfield's soundtrack before.
What?
I know.
Get out of
and
town.
I'm telling you what, I should have sampled his music into my intro theme is what I should have done. Because it was all the vibe that I was looking for.
It's not too late. You can still do it.
I guess I might edit it in for this one. All right, Erin, let's go ahead and dive into Superfly from 1972.
This dude is bad, and he ain't just fly. He's super fly, yeah, super fly. When it comes to women, they come to him, but it's still not enough. He wants a big score, $1 million in cash, yeah, the big one.
This is a chance, and I want to take it now, before I have to kill somebody, before somebody ices me.
What kind of money are we talking about?
Not much.
I want his ass out working.
Now, then I took all this chance for nothing, and I go back to being nothing, working some jive job for chump change day after day. Look, if that's all I'm supposed to do, then they're gonna have to kill me, because that ain't enough.
Ain't I clean, bad machine, super cool, super mean, feeling good for the man, super fly. Here I stand, secret stash, heavy bread, I'm your pusher man.
Can a super fly Harlem dude beat the system? He's got a plan to stick it to the man. He's super hood, super high, super dude, super fly.
Okay, Erin, what is this film about?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. And it's interesting because I feel like this film is a lot deeper than what you might think. It's about the drug culture in the 70s in Harlem. And then it kind of, if you want to go a little deeper, you're talking about a story about one person. So this drug dealer, our character Priest, it's his story, but it's even deeper than that. It's the story of real people in the society in the 70s. So to me, it's like the story of this guy. He's trying to get out of this drug business, but all he's seeing is that this is the only thing for you. This is all that you can do. And he runs into this throughout the story, but yet he's not going to give up on this dream. In a way, some people can view that as a negative thing, but there's a positive side to it, that people run into all this resistance, in life, and you can't do this, this isn't for you, this is your place, but it doesn't have to be. So I mean, it gets deep.
On one level, it's one last score and I'm out theme. But really, Priest realizes that he could wind up dead, but he wanted a better life.
And it's interesting because you think about the plot is that he wants to, stop selling cocaine. He wants to get on the straight and narrow, whatever that means to him. He doesn't really know, but he knows it's better. And you say, okay, I'm going to do this one last job and make enough money so I can get out. It's interesting because it's not like it's a gambling thing or something like, oh, I just need one more win and then I'm done. No, he needs to do this so that he can. This is his way out. This is the only way that he can see to get himself out of it, is to make enough money to where he can just skip town and go wherever it is that he needs to go to get away from the life that he's been living.
He has his partner, Eddie.
I'm getting out, Eddie.
Getting out of what?
The cocaine business.
Oh, sweet Jesus, man. Those junkies must have knocked a hole in your head. You gonna give all this up? 8-track stereo, color TV in every room, and can snort a half a piece of dope every day. That's the American dream, n***. Well, ain't it? Ain't it? You better come on in, man.
Eddie's character, he doesn't really believe that he can have anything more. He believes that he is at the top of where he can be in life, and that he doesn't want to blow that. He doesn't want to take a chance and lose what he has, for the possibility of something better, because he doesn't think that it can happen.
So something I noticed was when you look at the apartments of both Eddie and Priest, they're living pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
There's a scene very early on where Priest gets mugged, and he's chasing down his mugger. And the mugger is climbing over a fence, and Priest hurdles the fence. They goes up the fire escape, but you can see just the absolute squalor that people were living in Harlem. And so I think that this film, much like The French Connection, showed a part of New York that was run down. It was not the scene that you want to lead with on your advertisement for Come See New York.
Yeah, for sure.
But it was the reality of many people who lived in those buildings at the time when this film was being made.
Yeah. And, what's interesting, too, is the director is Gordon Parks Jr., right? He was actually doing, or maybe it was his dad, I can't remember now, because they were both photographers. And his dad was a photographer for Life magazine, and they were photographing people in Harlem. And there was a story, I guess, they ran in Life magazine about the way that people were living there, and just, as you say, the squalor and the struggles just to survive, being so poor. And when I saw that scene in the movie, that's what I thought of. So it showed this very real, authentic view of what it was like for people living in Harlem in the 70s. And it was very gritty. It was not pleasant. And I think that it's interesting also because when this movie came out, in the 70s, and this was when the blaxploitation movies were coming out, a lot of people didn't like that. The Black people didn't want to portray Black people in that light. But at the same time, it's real. And I think, in my opinion, showing that brought it to so many people who didn't realize that's how people lived.
Hey, let me ask you a question. So the name of the movie is Superfly.
Mhm.
What does that term mean to you?
Right. It's a great question. So, like when I first saw the movie as a young adult, and I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
Superfly, that sounds like it's groovy. You know, the
Hmm.
the guy, I mean, before I watched it at all, I'm like, oh, the main character, he's Superfly. He's just really cool and amazing. But what I learned is that actual term fly was on the street for cocaine at the
Hmm.
time. And so that's where the name came from, is they just added super because it was supposed to, you know, convey the level, the quality of the coke that our character
Yeah.
Priest was dealing. And then of course, I guess that kind of also related to him in a way. He kind of
Yeah.
became that in a way, but that was where it came from.
So I have always associated it in terms of cool.
Right.
And I'm telling you what, this movie just drips with so much style.
Oh gosh,
I
yeah.
mean, I'm just
Yeah.
from the clothing. I mean, Scatter when he comes in and he's wearing that red leather coat.
Yeah.
I mean, which was just amazing. All the way to, can we just say it, that Cadillac Eldorado?
Oh
I
man.
mean, was that
Right?
not the when I first saw that car and he pulls out in it? I'm like, what am I looking at here? What is this vehicle? It has like a Rolls Royce front, but it has this Cadillac body on it, and these headlights. They are amazing.
Right? So much personality.
Yeah, and I'm like, that car is Superfly.
Right? It is. And I mean, it's almost like you could say that about things. That guy, he's super fly. That car is super fly. So, I mean, they created their own slang with that. And the
Oh
car.
gosh.
I know we're going to talk about the car too. But yeah, all of the style, the music and like the outfits, the costumes, what people were wearing. I mean, those were real. I mean, they have,
Hmm.
a guy who like, went out and found all this, for the movie and everything.
Let's talk about that guy. That guy was Nate Adams.
Yes.
And Nate was good friends with the writer of this movie, Philip Fenty.
Right.
And Philip started off life not as a screenwriter, but he was working in advertising in New York City.
Yeah.
But what he really wanted to do was tell stories. This is around the time of the rise of the blaxploitation movies. And two of the biggest ones that had preceded Superfly was Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song.
Yeah.
I have not seen it.
Nope, me neither.
And Shaft,
Yeah.
which I also have not seen.
Okay, well, I'll join you on that because I haven't seen that either.
But these films were big. They were very, very influential. And Philip Fenty had thought, well, you know what? I might have a story for this. And the key came to him when he was reading a 1971 story in New York Magazine called The Man with the Golden Nose.
Yes.
And it centered around a Harlem drug dealer. From that moment on, Fenty and Adams started hitting the streets of Harlem to soak up, the culture, the fashion, the tension, what's going on the streets. So they weren't just making this movie, they were just beginning to build it up.
Right.
Adams, with his background in fashion, he was the one who helped to find that look, those coats, the flashy cars, everything on that.
And I was reading about that car, and I know that you've read about it too because it's pretty famous. And I guess it was someone's car that was at a like a barber shop, was it?
It was at the Teresa Hotel in Harlem, and Nate Adams was getting his shoes shined.
Oh, pretty close.
And this car pulls up, and out gets this guy. Guy sits down next to him to get his shoes shined. They start talking. I'm not sure if Nate Adams realized it at the time, but the man he was talking to was a guy named Casey. And Casey turned out to be a pimp in Harlem. And Nate said, hey, look, we're making this movie, and your car is really fly. We need to use it in the film. So Casey just kind of thought he was getting shined on. He said, yeah. Let me give you my number. It took about 3 weeks later before Casey realized that, yeah, they are making a movie.
Right.
Let me give this guy a call back. And so the car got put into the film. Now, the car that he had did not have that front with the Rolls Royce
Oh.
grill and the lights and everything. That was added by Les Dunham of Dunham Coach in New Jersey. And so they customized it with the Rolls Royce, the style grille, the round headlight covers, the fur-lined interior. Basically, they defined that pimp-mobile look
Oh my God.
to it. That, I mean, everybody afterwards would copy
Right.
for that.
Right.
And you know what? They put Casey in the movie.
Yeah, I did. I actually saw I saw that in the credits, and I was like, huh, and that was him.
You will know him the minute you see the red hat.
That was, yeah,
And
okay, that was him. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't sure,
Yeah.
but I know that they had the guy in there who was the pen. That was him. That's amazing.
And he had 2 scenes. In both scenes, he actually had lines in it.
Mhm.
So
They had a lot of like people that were from Harlem in that movie, that weren't real actors or anything.
it was such a independent movie. It was not just, let's go off and go get funding from the studio. The way in which they got funding was, okay, first of all, Sig Shore.
Right.
I got to talk about him because Sig Shore was the producer of the film. And what he would do is he would go and find foreign films and bring them to the U.S. And I think he had just gotten the rights to distribute the Italian movie called Black Jesus in the U.S. By this time, Parks Jr. had already become connected with Fenty Script. They were shopping it around, seeing who could help them make it. And they came across Sig Shore, who read the script. He only had one problem with it. The script was only 45 pages long. A rule of thumb, 1 minute of film time is equal to 1 page of a shooting script.
I didn't
So
know.
they had 45 minutes worth of film. If you kind of noticed, this film has a lot of going places.
Sure. Yeah, there's those moments where there's no dialogue, there's just things happening and transitioning. Yes.
But that gave us opportunity to listen to that soundtrack, right?
Yeah, it did. And I think also that was one thing that I was noticing when I was rewatching this movie is that they have these periods where there's no dialogue, there's none of that, but it's just like transitioning and there's music, but they're still telling the story in there. And I love that because you don't have to have the dialogue, you don't have to have anyone talking. It's just they're just telling the story visually through the music, and you're seeing how it's evolving and unraveling or unfolding rather.
I think that's a great thing that movies can do, is that a good movie can show you, not necessarily tell you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Sig basically told him, hey, don't worry about 45 minutes. We'll get a 90-minute film. Don't worry about it. But in terms of getting funding for this film, right, it was independently funded. So there were 2 black dentists, Ed Allen and Connie Jenkins, and they invested over $50,000 into this project.
Right.
And Gordon Parks Sr. kicked in $5,000 to make that.
Yeah.
And so that mix of community backing and family support provided them the freedom to tell this particular story in the way that they wanted to tell it.
Right. And it also shows that the people want to see that. They want to see movies made about their reality and authenticity,
This was one of the best responses that I heard while researching this film. They said, who would have thought there would be an audience for a major film led by a black director, backed by black investors with a non-white crew, telling a non-Hollywood story, that this would not do well? Who would have figured that wouldn't have worked? But again, we have to say, this was the sign of the times. You're right there in that 60s and 70s where the black voices that were in mainstream films
they weren't
basically, it was Sidney Poitier,
right?
And even his movies, they weren't controversial in the way that the movies that were coming would be.
Right. And
the civil rights movement was evolving, and people were starting to demand more honesty, more edge, more representation. And that's what sparked this wave of black cinema that we experienced in the 70s.
Right. I love the fact that this got made. I love the fact that this whole era happened because this is what people wanted. This is what the masses wanted to see. And I heard the argument, well, because this movie does have, it has drugs, it has violence, it has sex. You know, I've heard the argument, well, we don't want to show that to our, you know, children. We don't want to set up our children to see, you know, that the drug dealer is like someone to, you know, look up to, that kind of thing. But this film, I feel like it wasn't for that purpose. It wasn't to saying, hey kids, look at this guy, he's, you know, a drug dealer, but he can do better. I don't think that's not the point. The point is to tell the story, you know, of real people during this time, but it's a positive story. Are we allowed? I guess we have to do spoilers in here. There's no getting around that. But
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the film came out in 1972.
Yeah. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting, and I wanted to really share this with you because, like I said, I watched this movie again. You know, I'd seen it a long time ago, more than 20 years ago. And it went into my library of movies I love. Well, it had been a really long time. So when I'm watching this again, it was almost like I was watching it for the first time because there was a lot of it that I didn't remember. So as I was rewatching this movie, I was getting pulled into the story, and I kept thinking, you know, this is, you know, it could be depressing, right? Because there's parts where it's like, God, you know, the way people lived and the struggles that people were going through. But at the same time, you know, our main character, Priest, you can tell that, you know, he's not satisfied, and he's persevering on this dream of wherever he's going to get to. So there's this optimistic part of it as well. So it's not just sex and drugs and violence and depressing scenes and things. It's there's an undertone of optimism throughout it, and a you know, something unsaid that things can be better. And I kept watching this, and I was hooked into it. Like, I was very invested in his story, and you know, is he gonna make it? Is he gonna, you know, succeed here? And there were moments where I'm like, oh, he's gonna get busted, he's gonna get arrested, he's gonna get killed, and just the ending, of course, it's like now I remember it all, but I hadn't remembered it, so I'm watching it last night even, and like, what's gonna happen? But I got to the end, and I was very happy with it.
Yeah, and there's so many really good characters in this film.
Yeah.
Like Fat Freddy.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting about his character is he didn't do violence. He said that. And I don't do violence. You know, he didn't want to kill anyone. He didn't want to hurt anyone. You know, he just wanted to, you know, sell his cocaine and take care of his wife.
You know, he's maybe not the best member of Eddie and Priest's family.
He wasn't a top seller for sure.
No, and the cocaine has to be paid for.
Right. Do you know that the song in the movie Freddy's Dead, that's about the character Freddy? So when Curtis Mayfield was reading the script, that's when he started writing that song based on what was going to happen with Freddy.
That song will hook you in the film because they keep replaying it in all of the driving scenes.
It's interesting too because you say that, you know, they're playing that when people are driving, and then interestingly enough, I don't know if it's coincidence or not, but that's how Freddy dies, you know, that he gets hit by a car. And his story, I think, is also very important, you know, because there's all these smaller stories within the big one, and Freddy's is one of them. It's just another guy. He's a sweet guy. He loves his wife. He just wants to survive, and he's trying to follow his morals and ethics. He doesn't want to get involved in violence, although he does, but he ends up with the short end of the stick, unfortunately. And that's the story of a lot of folks, I think, that, you know, lived during that time and were in that drug culture. You know, not everybody survived.
Priest and Eddie are running a distribution system, right?
Yep.
In the past year, they've gone from 10 to 15 members of their family, as they call it, to over 50. They have grown significantly. The source where they're getting their drugs from is a friend of Priest whose name is Scatter.
He was a little bit of a father figure in a way.
That was exactly it. But you learn that Scatter is getting his drugs from...
Well, it's the man, right?
It's the man.
Yeah, the man has his hands in everything. And if you're working for the man, you're good. But then here's the problem. And this is what I think Scatter discovered. Once you're working for the man, you can't ever stop working for the man until the man is done with you.
And then once you're done,
done.
Eddie is elated. Christmas Day has come.
Right.
But for Priest, it's the absolute worst thing. It's like now he's deeper.
That's exactly right. We probably should give some more context if people haven't seen the movie, but Priest is going to Scatter because him and Eddie, they have $300,000. They want to buy 30 kilos of cocaine that they could then sell it, make $1 million, and get out of the business. And Eddie went on board with that. Eddie was, a little skeptical, but he liked Priest, and he said, okay, the money, I think, was intriguing for him. But they had to go to Scatter and say, hey, can you help us get this? And Scatter says, hey, I'm getting out. I'm not doing this anymore, right? But Priest says, he'll do it for me. That's that father figure thing. He's got this emotional connection with Scatter. And he's right. He does end up convincing Scatter to do this. And then the man finds Priest and Eddie and says, Scatter was trying to get out, but you guys, you have built up this family of dealers, like 50 people. You guys are my new Scatter. You guys are going to work directly with me. And that's when Eddie's like, oh, we're in it now. This is great. We don't have anything to worry about. And then Priest is like, oh no, I'm stuck.
Eddie started saying, well, think about the next 4 years, how much money we're going to make.
Right. It's all about the Benjamins. And that's where Eddie can't see anything beyond that. And he doesn't believe that there can be anything better or more than where they're at. And Priest doesn't want to give that up yet.
I kind of want to go back and talk a little bit more about Curtis Mayfield.
Yeah, and I forgot. He's actually in the movie.
That was so cool. He has such a distinct voice. It's almost sweet sounding.
Mm-hmm.
The words of the songs, they're kind of deep.
Oh, they are. And if you think about the song, like when they go into that club where Scatter's working and Curtis Mayfield experience, they're playing there and they're singing the song, Fisherman. And the sweet voice, but he's singing about something that's very depressing and very sad. There's no happiness. There's one of the lines in the song. Very interesting. It's a great song.
If you have access to Spotify, they have the original soundtrack and then they have the 50th anniversary. The 50th anniversary is the one you want to listen to. There's a great interview. The very last track is an interview with Curtis Mayfield.
I didn't know that.
The penultimate track is a radio spot that he made, basically say don't do drugs.
Oh man, that's so cool.
So I'm looking at Spotify and I noticed there are 4 of the songs that just stood out to me that I remember. From the opening of the film, Little Child Running Wild, Freddy's Dead, Superfly, and Pusherman.
Yeah.
And Pusherman has had 97 million plays. Superfly, 86 million. We're talking about a movie that came out how long ago?
53 years now, I think. 53 years ago.
I couldn't really get a definitive answer on the budget of this film was. I mean, obviously there was 55,000 up to 500,000. I'm going to tell you, based on other films that we have been reviewing, that is Roger Corman level budgets.
Oh yeah.
It made $4.8 million on its initial release. The soundtrack made $5 million in gross profits, which marks one of the rare times in which the soundtrack made more money than the film itself, which just goes to show you how popular this album was. It stayed at number 1 on the pop albums for 4 weeks.
That's incredible.
The singles, Freddy's Dead peaked at number 4, Superfly peaked at number 8, and also Give Me Your Love, which is the love theme between Priest and Georgia, or maybe Priest and Cynthia. I couldn't quite figure out that relationship.
Oh, well, Cynthia was just the mistress, but Georgia was his main spouse.
But even Cynthia was using him.
Right, of course.
She wants a pound of cocaine for her friends.
Sure.
Probably at a discount.
But she's got the connection and, she gets Priest because, he's nice looking too. It's all the perks, right? What was interesting about Cynthia, I thought, and pretty much all the other characters, all of them, Cynthia included, did not believe or want Priest to get out. They did not believe he could or he should. And I thought that was kind of interesting because when he finally got to the conversation with Cynthia and he's opening up to her about his feelings, that he wants to get out, and it's obviously something that's very important to him, and she says, you can't You can't, Priest. You don't want to hear that. If that's something you've got your heart set on, that's the last thing you want to hear is someone, shoot it down.
Georgia doesn't come in until about 45 minutes into the film. There's something about Georgia, it affects Priest. She is that one thing in his life that's pure and good.
It's interesting too, because you can see like she cares about him and she's not selfish in any way, whereas Cynthia is. The thing that I noticed too is that he's distracted because the whole movie really, I mean, this his quest is to get out of the business, and it's distracting him from everything, even the good things in life, like Georgia and his love for her. So she kind of has to like pull him back, like, look over here I am, you're not alone, and make him feel better and give him the encouragement, because no one else is doing that for him.
So I have one more story. Did you know where they originally previewed this film?
No, I have no idea.
So the initial sneak preview took place in Westwood, which was a predominantly white neighborhood in Los Angeles.
Interesting.
And the response was underwhelming, leading Warner Brothers to consider withdrawing their support from the project. Sick Shore was just infuriated. He's like, what did you expect to happen?
Right, yeah.
So he took the film, did a double billing with Shaft, and he took it to the Fox Theater in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah.
When Priest is doing his smackdown at the end, people are just going out of their minds at this point. And people were trying to break into the theater to see this film. I mean, it just blew up. Do you know what the biggest film of this year was?
No, I don't. Was it this one?
No. It was a little film known as The Godfather.
Oh, that's right. It did come out right before this.
This movie knocked The Godfather out for 2 weeks from the number one position. That's how good this film was.
Yeah, and it's funny because I remember reading now, because you said it, and I'm like, oh yeah, because it was out, Godfather was out, and people were really digging this kind of movie, like the mafia or the crime kind of drama, and this just came in. There was this interview, you shared this with me, and Ron O'Neal was talking to James Earl Jones.
Wasn't that crazy? Yeah. And they call James Earl Jones Jim. That blew my mind.
But it's something that Ron O'Neal said I thought that was really interesting about, when it opened, and he was talking about, I think it was Boston, where they were showing it in Boston, and he said there's only like 2 weeks worth of Black people to come out and see this movie, but it's still at the top. So the white people are coming out to see it too, and they want to see it. And that's what he was talking about. And so people in general, the masses, society, with the civil rights movement and all that, people wanted to see. The Godfather is an amazing movie, but this was reality and happening in our country at that time. Yeah. And people wanted to see it. That's amazing to me.
I just finished reading a book by Quentin Tarantino called Cinema Speculation. And when he was a young Quentin, his mother didn't have an issue with him going to see an R-rated movie where there was violence because, hey, this violence, it's not real.
Right.
His mother was a single mom. And so there were men who would come in and out of her life. And he was telling the story of this one guy who would take him to different cinemas in LA where he would go in and see some of these films, the Black films, in a theater that was in a Black area of town.
Right.
And where I'm going with this is because
I know where you're going.
When you watch his films, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is such an influence of this period and this genre in his works.
Yeah, you definitely see that. I think back then it wasn't called blaxploitation until later on, but a lot of folks didn't like that term. It's like, we're exploiting people. But a lot of those films were very influential for him, and he looks at that term as a badge of honor. And I kind of agree with that in a way, because by having all those films out there, that's what opened a lot of people's eyes and opened the door for, Black people in cinema, to get front and center, to have those big roles, to be the director, to own it, and to get away from their, the stereotypes in the older movies.
Look at the influence on the different filmmakers that we have, that we might not have them at all.
Right.
And I'm never really quite sure if I should say a black film or black exploitation. I try to say.
Well, I think you just say, it's a black film, right? And it's telling a story of black people in the 70s. And yeah, it is classified as black exploitation, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. In fact, quite the opposite, I would say.
Before we wrap up, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah. One more thing. I'll just share what I really loved about just watching this movie for the first time again is that it's not just fluffy. I mean, it's deep. There's a lot of story that you can connect with. Even I can feel, these characters, sympathize with them, empathize with them. I'm wrapped up in their lives. And as the movie is progressing, I was watching it and I could not stop watching it because I kept thinking, Priest is on this mission. He's trying to get out and he's got this plan, and the plan is taking some turns thrown in there to make it more interesting, but it's very realistic. Like, this could totally happen. He gets arrested, but not arrested because that's when the man finds him, and then he gets caught in deeper. And, I kept thinking, well, how's he going to get out of this mire that he's found himself in? And I kept worrying, I was invested in this, I was watching this, like biting my nails almost. And he gets this turn where he gets personal information that Scatter had on the man, right? But he gives it to Priest. He says, I've got all this dirt, on the man, take this. And so Priest comes up with this plan. He hires the mafia.
I had no idea that's why he was meeting with these Italians.
Yeah, but did you see it? He hands them the envelope with all the background information. And then he gives them another envelope with a whole bunch of money in it. And they shake hands and they're done. And I'm like, oh, he's putting a hit on somebody or something. He's talking to the mafia, right? So Eddie betrays him, calls the man, and they pick him up. But he makes the switch with Georgia. She takes the money and then they take it away. And I'm like, but what's going to happen to him? Because I didn't know. I couldn't remember. So I'm like, oh my God, is he just going to let Georgia take the money and go live a life and get out of here? And I'm sacrificing myself. No, he breaks out his kung fu and he beats up all the thugs and he confronts the man. And he says, I hired the best killers. I hired white killers. And then, the man's a white guy. So the mic is dropped and he just walks away, goes to his car. He turns around, he gives him this look, and then he takes off. And that he won. That he got out. Yeah. And it was just like, damn, that was great. I told my husband, I'm like, you got to see this movie.
He rides off in the sunset.
He does. He does.
How cool is
it?
That?
It is. It's
How
so
cool.
And this is the story that people needed at that time. You think about all this realistic background. Here's Harlem. Here's the poverty. Here's the struggles that people are going through. But you can get out, and he does. And so it's not one of those films that's like, look how cool the drug dealer guy is. And yeah, he's dressing neat and he's driving a great car. No, there's more to that. So that's the message in the end. It's like, yeah, okay, you can maybe get to that. Like Eddie was happy there. And he said, this is it. This is the best. No, Priest shows that you can do better. You can get out. So there's a good message in the end.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So are we ready to ask the big question?
Yeah. Let's ask the question.
Did Superfly groove through the ages, or did it skip a beat? What's your thoughts?
I think you know my thoughts, but well, first of all, it definitely grooved through the ages, thanks to Curtis Mayfield. But even if the music wasn't there, the story, I think, definitely still grooves 100%. I mean, watch it today, you won't be sorry. It's great, timeless.
Honestly, I was surprised that you recommended it. So I know that if you recommend something, watch it. And so I feel like I have discovered a whole new genre of movies. And I know there'll be good films and I know there'll be bad films. But this was a great film to kick it off. And it has such a strong theme. And it leans on that classic one last job storyline. Beyond that, it gives a raw, honest look at inner city life in Harlem in the 70s.
Right.
And you already said it. The Curtis Mayfield soundtrack, Superfly, caught me by surprise, and it grooves through the ages.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Chuck. It's been really fun.
Well, that's all for this episode of the Cinematic Flashback. Let us know if you have watched Superfly and what you think about it. You can do so by emailing us at podcast@cinematicflashback.com or leave a comment on our Facebook page, the Cinematic Flashback Podcast. And you can find us on X. Our handle is @Back270sMovies. And please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. The best way you can share this show is to recommend us. We deeply appreciate the feedback that we have been receiving, so keep it coming. Also, we're trying to build this show, and we deeply appreciate a review on the platform you were listening on. And if you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star review so that we can reach more listeners. So join us next time as we take the Wayback Machine to the 70s to explore another film from that decade.
So if I recommend another movie later, are you going to make me be on the show again? I'm kidding, but I will. But
the next time you recommend a film, we will schedule you back on.
Oh my!
I would love that. I had a lot of fun today.
Well, thank you. I had a lot of fun too. I had a lot of fun prepping for it as well, and just being able to go back and watch it. It's like I said, I saw it a long time ago, and it's just I checked it off as that this is one of the great movies that I always want to have on my favorite list, and. Going back and watching it again reminded me why. And I'm glad I was able to do this with you.